Good Wednesday evening, everyone. And the music's still going. Why is that?
It's not going for
We
us.
can't hear it.
Here, I was. Anyways, good Wednesday. Oh, good.
I got it, Dwight.
Yeah, good Wednesday evening, everyone. We are joined by our special guest this evening is Kerry Gillespie, chairman of the Maryland Alliance for Parents and Students, and our guests tonight are Jackie Saxton and Nicole Bennett. Take it away.
He was thrown off. I was
Voice of God.
The normal, good Wednesday evening, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us as well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to everybody this evening.
Awesome. So you are the chairman for Maryland Alliance for Parents and Students. Can you tell us a little bit about MAPS and what that is?
Absolutely. So Maryland Alliance for Parents and Students arose when, after COVID, we saw a huge need within our state, but within the entire country, for people to rise up, especially parents, to have an opportunity to have some representation, some real representation on school boards. Mm-hmm. So MAPS, or Maryland Alliance of Parents and Students, is an organization where we will support candidates throughout the state of Maryland who are conservative. These can be first-time candidates, these can be parents, these can be concerned citizens who want to step up and who recognize that we need to focus on a back to basics classical education in our schools, get the indoctrination out of our schools. Like I said, focus on educating our children and also focus on the importance of parents having a say in our children's education and how vital that is to the education of children. So we will do that by supporting candidates, like I said, who hopefully will become school board members. And those candidates then can help to facilitate and ensure that some of these guiding principles are followed through within our school systems in every county in Maryland.
Fantastic. So Kerry, good to see you again. The last time I saw you was at the leadership conference and it was amazing. You guys did a fantastic job putting that together.
Thank you.
Lots of learning opportunities. But my question is about classical education. So we hear that word tossed around a lot when we talk about education. Can you inform our audience what the difference is between classical education that teaches kids critical thinking and that kind of thing versus what we're seeing coming out of some of the schools with the different framework?
Sure. So, for me, classical education, like I said, it's this focus on the core subjects. It's giving kids an ability to think for themselves and to actually be able to reason. We also have Common Core within the state of Maryland right now in every single school district, and that unfortunately has been an abysmal failure. So it would get Common Core out of our schools to focus on prioritizing educating in the classical education model, which focuses on literature, mathematics, history, music, and arts. All of those things are important. It gives kids the basic fundamental tools, these building blocks to be able to think for themselves. And as they grow and as they learn within the model, they're able to expand upon their thought processes that way, and actually think instead of regurgitating information.
Mm-hmm.
So this couldn't come at a more, I would say, important time when it comes to education for our students. Obviously, there's the culture aspect of it, things that are going on in our schools that parents have been pushing back against. I think obviously the most notable version of what went on in Loudoun County, Virginia. But then you also have students who are just simply not learning. And we saw that in Maryland, particularly in Baltimore. Can you talk a little bit about, what MAPS has been doing to try and, get that message out there that our schools are failing our students?
Absolutely. So not only are we supporting candidates, but we are on the forefront of making sure that we are shining a light on what is going on in our schools. We are doing that through our media contacts, along with our contacts within the Maryland General Assembly. some of our main concerns that we've been focusing on recently are starting last fall, every year we have Maryland State Assessment Test, which is called MCAP. And last fall, those test results should have been released for the first testing post-COVID when children went back to school. Maryland State Department of Education refused to release those scores. And right away, we had some concerns about that. We had our General Assembly pushing back, trying to get the answers as to why they didn't release the scores. We never did get that information. They finally released the scores. We found out why they didn't release them before the election. And it was because, unfortunately, our children have fallen so far behind, more than they were falling actually behind before COVID. Maryland was the third to the last state to go back to school, put our kids back into classrooms. And unfortunately, that hurt all children in the state, but especially the most vulnerable populations, a lot of them within Baltimore City. What we found when they finally did release the test scores was that there are 23 schools in Baltimore with 0 kids proficient in math. This is at the same time when we are funding Baltimore schools with over almost $22,000 per student. It is one of the highest funded school districts in the entire nation. So obviously that set off alarm bells. In addition, recently, the Maryland State Department of Education removed those test scores. They finally released them, then they removed them off of their website. Project Baltimore through Fox 45 has been following this closely. And along with them, we've also been releasing press releases, expressing our concern, trying to get the media actually to shine a light on what's going on with this situation. They have removed test scores. They're alleging it's to follow federal guidelines. But unfortunately, they're only removing test scores in low-performing schools and not high-performing schools with some of the same statistics that they're citing as their reason for removing those test scores. So we're trying to hold MSDE accountable. We believe that as taxpayers, as parents, we have a right to know what the information is, because boards of education and parents cannot help, and schools cannot help our children to improve in these areas where our kids have fallen behind if we don't know where they are. That is the fundamental reason why we test our children. Ironically, at the same time that this was going down, Anne Arundel County last week was doing the next round of MCAP testing for our students. I spoke to our Board of Ed a couple of weeks ago. I said, why are we repeating the testing, which takes valuable time away from our educators and our children in classrooms, when we don't even know the results from a year ago?
Right.
How is that beneficial to our children? And those are the types of questions that from a MAP standpoint that we want to stay on top of. We want to make sure that our school districts, both from the county level and the state level, are doing the best that we can do for our children, because all children deserve to reach their fullest potential. And right now, they're not even meeting bare minimum standards.
Yeah. So what I found very interesting during that whole Project Baltimore scandal was the lack of transparency. And in addition to the lack of transparency, kind of this patriarchal system that said, well, we're not going to give it to you and there's really nothing you can do about it. And I was so very proud of MAPS when you guys came out swinging with your press release and was like, you're going to show us this information. These kids belong to us. They don't belong to you. Have you guys run up against that lack of transparency in a lot of places, or was this kind of like the first incidence?
I think this is the largest. MAPS is fairly new. Like I said, we started in 2022. But from a parental standpoint, that is what we have been facing around this entire country. There is a lack of accountability from school boards, both from a county level and a state level. There's a lack of them transparency, to your point, or being willing to answer questions or listen to us. We saw when Fox 45 Project Baltimore approached Mohammed Chaudhry, the state superintendent, he actually went behind a door and locked it and refused to answer questions. And we don't think that's acceptable. Now, Mohammed Chaudhry, the state superintendent, is not elected. He is appointed. But we feel like the General Assembly should hold him accountable and should demand that he answer questions.
Agreed. I don't think this is a Democrat or Republican problem. This is a Maryland problem.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't have children in the school system, these are the kids that are going to take care of us when we're old and gray, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Prayerfully, that they'll get educated here in Maryland under this very expensive blueprint and stay in Maryland. and
Right.
keep our tax, quote unquote, tax base strong. Speaking of the blueprint, where does MAPS stand on the blueprint and all of this wonderful money that's going to rain from the heavens, right?
Yes. Well, between the funding for Kerwin and the federal funding that kicked in, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but we had a huge influx of cash into the school system federally as well following COVID.
Yeah.
So that's where we fall at that number of $22,000 a student in Baltimore. But it's looking like it's going to continue to accelerate, especially when Kerwin starts to kick in. We know that Kerwin is here; it's here to stay. It's challenging, but I think this is part of making sure that we are holding them responsible and having some return on investment. I mean, that's what I'm all about. If I'm going to be increasing the tax dollars that I'm paying in as a taxpayer, I want to know that I'm getting some results for that, whether I'm a parent or not, but especially because I'm a parent. So when you're telling me you've got 93% of kids in Baltimore who are not at grade level for math, I'm not okay with that when I'm giving them $22,000 a child. That's why we feel like if we can institute some of these classical education models within the schools, that this is something that hopefully we can see results from and improving the outcome that these kids have, and encouraging them to actually learn instead of just being indoctrinated within schools.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about you, because everyone has their origin story, how they got to be involved in politics. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got involved?
Well, you say involved in politics, but I don't even know if I consider myself that. I guess so. Although MAPS is nonpartisan, I want to make sure that we emphasize that. So one thing I want to say about that as well, before I talk about myself, is that, this, like Nicole mentioned earlier, this is not a partisan issue. Children deserve to be encouraged to reach their full potential. And we owe our children that. And that is what we're paying for as taxpayers. That's what parents want. It doesn't matter if you're in Baltimore City. It doesn't matter if you're in Anne Arundel County. It doesn't matter what county you're in. And parents, regardless of their political affiliation, know that our schools are failing our children. So to me, education and making sure that we give our children the best education possible is nonpartisan, period. And Board of Education, to that extent, or to that point, Board of Education seats are nonpartisan as well. But for me, the reason why I became involved in this, my background is in marketing, but I've been primarily a stay-at-home parent for 4 children for almost 20 years. My twins will be 20 in June. I also have a 13-year-old in middle school and public school. My older kids went to public school as well. And I have a just turned 5-year-old. She'll be in public school next year. And I have seen a huge shift from my almost 20-year-old to now my 5-year-old within the school system. And so during COVID, when I saw how much my children were suffering not being in school, when I saw how poorly our representatives were acting on the science, and instead, obviously on a political agenda, that's when I started to really fight back. I was always involved. I always advocated for my children, but I went to the school board meetings. I went to our General Assembly to fight for our kids and for parental rights in education. I just got pushback everywhere I went. And so I decided I was going to run for office. And I ran for office because the person that I ran against, who is my representative right now, actually sponsored legislation that allows for 12-year-olds to receive mental health treatment without parental knowledge or consent. That is now state law in Maryland. That passed our General Assembly several years ago now. And I was infuriated because she is not a parent and I am a parent. And I want to say, if my child has a mental health issue, parents need to be involved, period. And so I was fighting both for our education system and for parental rights within that movement. So unfortunately, my campaign was not successful, but I can tell you the doors that I hit, the number of people I spoke to, it didn't matter the letter after their name, whether they're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. They are concerned about our schools. They care about our schools, and they know that we need to do better. And that's why I decided to become chair of MAPS, because regardless of whether I won that election or not, I'm still going to continue fighting for my children, for all children. And I think it's vital that all children be encouraged to reach their fullest potential.
Agreed. I think that it's such a wonderful and refreshing take As someone who is very political, there are very few people who are willing to stand on middle ground nowadays. Everyone's kind of hanging on the fringes. But when it comes to our kids, if we can't agree on that middle ground, we really are lost as a nation.
Absolutely.
What really struck me about MAPS is the number of candidates that you guys found, and how those candidates kind of crossed the spectrum of Marylanders, but they were all very strong on parental rights. An you tell us a little bit about those candidates?
Yes, so we had a very successful year. So we actually didn't officially start as an organization until after the primary in 2022. We have a candidate sheet, a questionnaire that we fill out. We speak to our candidates. And we did endorse 25 candidates throughout the state and in all types of counties. We had 14 that won their seats, and we're very proud of that number.
That's fantastic.
Yes, it was very exciting, especially for our first go around. So we're hoping to get more coming up here in this next election. Now, Anne Arundel County, where I live, all of our Board of Education is up for the ballot. Will be on the ballot this go around. So we need good candidates. We need to have them in Anne Arundel County. We need them throughout the state, and we're excited to find them and to support them and to help them to grow to be the best candidates that they can be.
Cool. So can you talk about what work you're doing to prepare for the next cycle where we have Board of Education races? Because I don't think we have any next year, right? Or am I wrong about that?
We do. So Anne Arundel County will be completely on the ballot this go around. We have a few other counties as well that will have some seats up for. Anne Arundel County is definitely one of our main focuses. I can be honest and say that we are struggling to find good candidates. We need resources. We need people to reach out to us. We need people to not be intimidated. I can tell you, as a first-time candidate myself, the last go around, it is definitely a daunting task to take on a campaign. Most people don't know where to even begin, how to even file. These are the types of things that we will help with. We will help with, with the entire process. We just need to find people who care, people who want our schools to be better, people who want our children to be educated, people who want a say in their children's education. That's what we need. So that is our main focus, is trying to get into groups where we can have these discussions, so we can find the best candidates for these positions that are coming up. And so we can get started. We're ready to work. We're ready to stand behind our candidates. Some of the things that we really could need, again, having contacts, meeting within these groups. We need volunteers. If you've ever run a campaign before, again, it is a daunting task, but one person cannot do it alone. It takes a team. And I can tell you, there are other teams that have a lot more support behind them than what some of our more conservative candidates tend to get, and especially in our state. So we need volunteers who are willing to step up. You can do things like behind the scenes, or you can go in person. We also need parents who are concerned to step up as well, not necessarily just to run for school board. Send emails to the Maryland State Department of Education, send emails to your Board of Education, or better yet, come in person, speak at the school board meetings. I think, like I said, I spoke at our last school board meeting. I tend to be at most school board meetings. I was one of 4 people there. And that's sad, and this is in Anne Arundel County. Over half of our 50% of our tax dollars go to fund our school systems. Even if you don't want to speak, you should show up. You should know what's going on within our children's schools. And then besides volunteers, we need financial donations. We are going to be supporting these candidates, but it takes money to run a campaign. That's just the reality of it. So if you are so inclined to donate, I know that we had our website up here. It's mapsboe.com. We take donations through there. You can also email me if you'd like to directly at mapschair@gmail.com. If you have any, whether it's an organization we can speak at, whether it's a potential candidate, or whether you just want to volunteer within your group, you're welcome to email me as well. We're happy to put you to work however you would like to be put to work.
This is fantastic. So what you're seeing now on your screen is this wonderful, wonderful website that gives you all of the information you need to know about MAPS, what it believes in, where it's going. the type of education messaging, especially that they're looking for in candidates. So not all candidates are going to make the cut. And you said before that you use a metric to determine whether or not the candidate is something or someone that would kind of fit the MAPS mold. But as someone who believes in quality education, I'm originally from Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, we do things a little differently. We build schools like prisons, and we build prisons like small schools. Our onus is different. We want children to be smart. My high school, I graduated number 12 of a class of 2,700 kids, right?
Wow.
Yeah, my parents didn't play. My dad still don't play, right? Like they didn't play any games when it came to education.
I don't either.
But Pennsylvania was a very different place. The expectation was for you to learn. And you didn't just hear that from your parents. You heard that from people in the community. You heard it on, TV all the time. We really emphasized being good citizens. It was not cool to be dumb. It just really was not. People kind of frowned on children who underperformed in school. So they had this wonderful thing called Saturday detention. And I'm going to tell you, just do it one time and it will change your life.
I don't know, man. I watched The Breakfast Club.
Not that kind of fun Saturday detention. It's the Saturday detention where you're scraping the gum off the floor and kind of watching the walls. So it was very different than what I know that our children have now. But kind of circling back around to Anne Arundel, I had the opportunity to be at a meeting maybe 2 weeks ago at Anne Arundel where Derek Green from the Alliance Defending Freedom was speaking. And, I showed up afterward and there were a very small group of protesters across the street.
I was there as well.
I thought it funny that there were, protesting, but it is Anne Arundel. They protest a lot. It was not my first Anne Arundel protest, but to hear and to see some of the op-eds that came out of those protesters, it's sad. It really is sad. It's frightening to think that there are people who live in Anne Arundel County who are afraid to have information, right? Mr. Green said nothing earth-shattering. In fact, a lot of his speech you can find on their website, right? The details that he gave you can find on the website. But these protesters were angry that this man was sharing information. Is that not the purpose of education? Whether you agree or not, just hearing the information gives you an opportunity to critically think, say, well, I'll take a little from column A, not so much from column B, but their onus was to make sure that no one heard it. I mean, Isn't that what we're actually fighting against when we talk about classical education? Hear something, form your own opinion, be intelligent about it.
Absolutely. And to your point with that, I was at that meeting as well because I want to hear as much as I can and get as much information as I can and make decisions for myself as an American. I feel like that's my right and my duty to do that. And yes, they wanted to shut it down. They tried to shut it down beforehand. They tried to protest the restaurant. They tried to call the restaurant. And then of course, they protested and then they, like you mentioned, they wrote op-eds about it, against it afterwards. What we face as parents, both as parents, concerned parents, and within the Maryland Alliance of Parents and Students, is because we actually had an issue where we spoke at that same location, but at a separate meeting where they showed up as well. And they didn't protest, but they came in and we're ready to, ask some questions and try to disrupt. And, I'm all for, hey, if you want to come in and listen, you're welcome. Can I come into your spaces as well too? But, a lot of their issue is they are against parental rights. Yes. Now, when I spoke at the school board meeting a couple of weeks ago in Anne Arundel County, it was one of the pieces I spoke about was in our Maryland General Assembly this last session, there was a bill up to support parental rights in education. Unfortunately, it did not pass. The Republicans supported it. The Democrats did not. And when I spoke at the meeting about that, and I talked about how the more involved parents are in a child's education, it has been shown in study after study, the more positive and beneficial of an outcome a child has in education. That is not deniable. These are not partisan studies. Parents need to be involved in their child's education in order for them to have the best outcome. those are the things I spoke about at my Board of Ed meeting. And after I spoke, I had somebody who spoke after me who said how those of us who speak on parental rights, how we are wrong and how we are only book banners. We want to ban books.
Oh, wow.
We don't want children to have access to books. And that is an issue we're seeing throughout the country. There is, this is a separate issue, but there are books within our public school system that are completely unacceptable and in some cases graphic, obscene, and in some cases almost pornographic in elementary school libraries. And so a lot of the pushback on that from a parental rights standpoint has been, let's have age appropriate books in our schools. We have movie ratings. Why, if we can have movie ratings, it's not banning somebody from seeing the movie. The parent can get that book for their child outside of the school if they want to, but why should our taxpayer dollars fund those books? And also, why should they be acceptable or giving a kindergartner the opportunity to check it out without parents being involved in the process? So we get a lot of pushback on the parental rights issue. And it's kind of surprising to me because we actually support all parents to have the right to do whatever they want with their child's education. So it doesn't matter what your beliefs are, but yet they don't want us to be able to have our beliefs and to educate our children the way we feel like is the best way to educate them, which is to focus on these core subjects and not the indoctrination. So it's surprising in some ways, but in other ways it's not. But they do not support parental rights in education. They want complete control.
What it seemed like, I'm sorry, Jax, what it seemed like to me was, again, not being overly political, but, here is this highly intelligent senior fellow at a lot of different organizations. And just full disclosure, he is a member of Project 21, which is a part of the National Centers for Public Policy and Research. I too am a member of Project 21. But here's this man who is dedicating part of his life to sharing information about education. And there are like 4 white women outside with Crayola boards protesting this Black guy in Anne Arundel County coming to talk about education and calling themselves progressive. I think the progression stopped right there at the front door. I found it distasteful, incredibly distasteful.
Absolutely.
I agree. And Nicole, didn't they actually allege that he was being racist within the op-ed, but yet they never did mention they never did mention his race, did they?
No, I think, because maybe some of their cronies would pull their card, but on behalf, and I can say this because, I've been Black my life, right? On behalf of us, please stop trying to help us. Please stop it. We do not need your help. We're doing just fine. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So, Kerry, as somebody who comes from a marketing background, how should we be better messaging? Because it seems a lot like we get out-messaged and out-marketed by the progressives because a lot of people are believing that, we're book banners, that, we are every negative thing that they accuse us of. And it just doesn't seem like we do a very good job of marketing that, no, actually, we're very, very rational in our thinking. So from your marketing background, how should we be getting that message out there?
I love that question because actually at our recent conference that Nicole mentioned, that was one of the breakout session trainings that I did. I think we both as parents and as organizations can be much more effective with our messaging. When I speak, whether it's at the General Assembly, whether it's at the Board of Education, I like to really call out facts to them. I like to bring the numbers, the statistics, and I like to use sources that they find to be credible. I'm not going to be sourcing somebody like Breitbart News or some of those sources that, as soon as you mention the name, they're just going to turn off and not listen to you. So we need to be smart about our messaging and as far as using numbers, using real information, and then combining that with the emotional message as well. Whether it's an experience within your own family, your child, or somebody that you know about, combining those two things can be very effective. I also like to, to make sure that I am combining those two in a way to where I am being factual rather than necessarily getting up there screaming and yelling during your delivery is not going to get anybody anywhere. Exactly. Nobody's going to listen to you. And I like to also, if I'm speaking, I also like to follow up with emails. I think it's more effective to make sure that people actually heard what you were saying. And so those are some ways that you can do it. I also would love to see, like I mentioned earlier, more participation in our meetings. You know, you mentioned earlier the Loudoun County, Virginia incident. And I can say that from Anne Arundel County standpoint, we did not have that kind of turnout when it came to even school reopenings and parental choice with masking our children. Though we did have a bigger turnout then, but then now that our children are back in school, nobody's seeming to be concerned and coming to the meetings anymore. So that's something that we need to do is show up more, to be effective in organizing those within our groups. You don't have to be a parent to go to the Board of Ed meeting. You have to be a concerned person. Taxpayers, I mean, like I said earlier, your tax dollars are funding these schools. So it's the combination of that and having your voice be heard. Remember, these people are your representatives. You have a right to redress your representatives guaranteed to you in our amazing country. So it is their duty to allow that, and your duty to use your voice to be heard to make sure that happens.
Agreed.
Yeah. And the other, to your point, again, like, this is our taxpayer dollars here. One of the conversations that's taking place across the counties right now is budgeting for the year.
Yes.
And, you know, one of the things that we talk about, especially in places like Baltimore City, is that we're just throwing money at a problem and expecting it to be solved. So is MAPS or any of the parents that, you know, maybe the Moms for Liberty groups, are they getting involved in these budget conversations and saying, hey, listen, we need to talk about where the funding for these schools are going? What are they doing with that money?
It's challenging. That's something that that I've been having conversations with recently with multiple different groups. It's something that we are concerned about, but I can tell you it depends on the county and the reality of the makeup of the county council. So in Anne Arundel County, we have a seven-person county, 3 Republicans and 4 Democrats. So I can tell you right now that I've had a lot of people reach out to me with concerns about the budget that has been proposed, which is going to raise our taxes again. And unfortunately, I can tell you the reality is it's probably going to pass the way it is. So, you know, it's one of those things where, and this is something else with messaging, is that we have to be strategic and really figure out where we can have the best impact. And that's why elections are important. That's why even county council, you know, that's something COVID showed me more than ever, was how important our local elections are, our local and state elections, because these were the people that kept so many of us out of businesses. Our businesses closed, our schools closed. These are the people that had that biggest impact on a day-to-day basis in our lives. And so this shows you that every election matters. I'm not saying that people shouldn't, if they're concerned, reach out to their county councils and express their concern about these budgets. It's just knowing the reality of where the numbers fall and where we can actually be effective.
Do you know, they're down in Worcester County, Karen Abbott, she's I think she's District 1, if I'm remembering correctly. She's having her first town hall on Thursday, where she's, you know, going line by line through the school budget. And what she's finding is not a lot of waste, but money that's been appropriated to things that don't necessarily breed success for the child or success for the teacher. So what she's trying to do is show the community what it is, this level of transparency that they haven't had before. And of course, she's getting, you know, some pushback and people are a little angry, but isn't that usually what happens when you shine a bright light in a dark place?
Absolutely.
You know, things happen. But I'm going to tell you, they got the right girl. Karen Abbott is not going to let it go. She's
good for her. Sounds like I need to meet her.
Oh, she's amazing. She's a spitfire. And, you know, she has the heart of the people that she serves. She waited a while before she ran for office, you know, kind of living her life and doing her thing, but things got so confusing and convoluted. So she had to step in, and she stepped up, and despite some challenges, she won her race. Way to go, Karen. And
yay,
now she's doing great. I mean, like, I'm so proud of her. I should get a Karen Abbott t-shirt to go with my collection. She's a super terrific woman. She's very honest and very community focused. And that's when elections really matter. These county council races, you hear voters talk about, well, I'm just voting for the first four, that kind of thing. And luckily for her, she's Abbott. So, there's that. But Karen had this idea of talking to her neighbors and saying, look, where is all this money going? I mean, they're saying we're getting all this money. Where is this money going? And I think that was genius on her part, because I'm sure they thought to themselves the same thing. What are we doing with these resources?
Absolutely. That's the same exact conversation that I had with voters when I was running, and that I'm still concerned about personally. I can tell you, and this is why we feel like these school board seats are so important, because the boards come up with the counties and within the boards and the superintendents come up with the budgets, and then they propose them within the county, and then the county then either approves it or doesn't, and then comes back with the money. So within Anne Arundel County, that's been a huge issue for me, because I'm looking at where some of these proposed, which will probably pass, proposed increases are going to be happening. Mm-hmm. And I noticed both last year and this year that we have had a huge increase in the number of teachers. Well, that sounds great, right? But then you look at the type of teachers, and they are SEL, which is social and emotional learning teachers. Mm-hmm. Now, SEL sounds great on the surface, but unfortunately, that's where a lot of this indoctrination is hidden mm-hmm. within our schools. Mm-hmm. And so I don't see. And my other frustration was, my mom was a school teacher. I value our teachers. I've always partnered with my children's teachers within their classroom. We want the best teachers that we can have in our classrooms within the state, because the better the teacher, also the better the outcome of the student. However, the more money that we're pouring into these school systems, less and less is trickling down into the classrooms. Right. Less and less is being shown to the teacher and being shown to the student. And that's where I have concerns personally. And it's definitely about, to your point, shining a light on it, mm-hmm. looking at exactly where these numbers are falling, and does it make sense? Are we actually funding educating our children? Mm-hmm. Or is there a lot of extra fluff in there? And I think, sadly, a lot of the extra money goes to the extra fluff.
Yeah. Right. You still have teachers who are paying out of their own pockets to have supplies in their classrooms, pencils, yes. things like that.
Well, and parents do too. Parents,
some supplies, yeah.
I pay hundreds of dollars every year for my child for public school, and I have since my now 20-year-olds were in kindergarten, and I'm okay with that, because I don't want the teachers having to pay for it. Mm-hmm. But in the same respect, why, when we're paying more and more tax dollars, are those fundamental basics not within the schools? I hear from my daughter every day she doesn't use the bathroom at school because there's no hand soap or toilet paper. Wow. I mean, these are the types of things that we're hearing. And after COVID, the federal funding that the schools got was supposed to go towards things like circulation, soap, sanitizer, those types of things. But I've heard this from my kids throughout the years, but I'm still hearing it within the schools. So that money is definitely not getting down to the classrooms where it needs to be.
There's a great school, I think it's in Talbot County, Maple Elementary, and they have the coolest thing. It's a book vending machine, right?
Awesome.
So, this book vending machine, they have like a day where the kids who, been good citizens, got good grades, listen to the teacher, they get the coins to put into the machine and they get a book. But it's an assembly. So there are kids standing there on lines on both sides, and the lucky recipients go up and they pick it, and they're like lotto winners. They hold these books up over their head like, yeah.
I love that.
I absolutely adore the idea of having children fall in love with reading. But what's going on is teachers were funding the vending machine. It's like $2,000 to fill the vending machine. So teachers were pulling their money. And Jackie and I belong to a political group of women, and we've adopted the idea of raising enough money to fill up that vending machine for them, so that the teachers are no longer kind of, putting money in a can to make sure the kids can continue to get these books. It's such an amazing idea. I love to replicate it. Yeah, I would love to.
I love that. I actually heard Dr. Ben Carson speak last year at a conference I went to, and he spoke about how he grew up in a with a single parent household. His mother, I guess, had been originally married, but then found out her husband was a polygamist. So she left him. He and his brother were the only two in the house besides his mother. She worked full time. She cleaned houses, and she cleaned houses for people who were wealthy, and they were very poor. And he talked about how she really looked at what made these wealthy people, a lot of them were doctors or businessmen, and what set them apart. What were they doing with their children at home? And it was that their children were being given books at home to read. So she came home one day and she took the television out of the house, and he said, nowadays, I bet I could have called CPS on her because she took the TV out. But instead, she gave him books after books after books and took them to the library. And he and his brother read, and he fell in love with medical and anatomy books. And that led him down his journey to become the amazing physician that he became. And I think books open up a whole world to children. I've always read to my kids. I love taking them to get books. It's challenging now because whether it's our public schools or publicly funded libraries, there's a lot of indoctrination going on within those groups as well. But reading can open so many windows. And if you spark that excitement in children to learn and to read, it opens so many doors.
I agree. I think for adults as well, as someone who watches very little TV, unless it's locked up abroad, because that's just good TV. But reading is such an escape. And you can learn so much about the world. You learn a lot about yourself. I just think when you see little kids, especially when they get their first chapter book, it kind of does something in their mind where they feel like they've really got a grasp of knowledge now, and they're just kind of stepping out into this wide world that we have. And it really does make a big difference. This particular school is in a majority minority community. And I was fortunate enough to see a video of the little kids. I think it was like 4 or 5 of them who got books. And I'm telling you, it was like they were lotto winners. Like they hit the Powerball. Their friends were jumping up and down and screaming for them. It was so amazing. And I told Jackie, I said, we got to raise some money to fill up the vending machine. We got to fill that vending machine.
That's amazing.
It would be really great if we could replicate that across the state, because learning very much is a learned behavior, right? So
absolutely.
Once you learn to love education, it does carry throughout your entire life.
Absolutely.
So we're getting to the point of the show where we get to talk about what else is going on in the state. So I want to start with you, Kerry, to give a chance. If you have people who are watching tonight who are interested in getting involved with MAPS or want to run for Board of Ed, where can they do that? Where can they get in touch with you?
Great. Yes, absolutely. So I know the website's been coming up under my name. It is MAPS, BOE, for Board of Education, mapsboe.com. You can also find us on Facebook. You can message us directly through Facebook, or you can email me directly, mapschair@gmail.com. Again, we would love to find candidates. We'd love to find groups where we can come and speak. We love to find volunteers, and any financial donations would be so welcome and would go to great use.
Awesome. And then from our end, things that we want to promote, if you have not already bought your ticket for the Garrett County Lincoln Day Dinner on June 3rd, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be their speaker. That's a huge get. He had some really interesting news come out right even before we went live, talking about how he wants to propose a constitutional amendment to up the voting age to 25. So that will certainly be interesting. I'm sure someone's going to ask about that. On June 1st, you can join the Montgomery County Republican Club for Pizza and Politics at the Mama Lucia in Olney. Europe C. Morgan will be our speaker, and she's a super dynamic speaker, so you're not going to want to miss that. What else is going on, Nicole?
Girl, are you serious? Let me pull up the calendar.
St. Mary's County's Lincoln Day Dinner.
June 5th. Yes.
June 5th, yes. And they have Matt Gaetz as their speaker. May 24th, I believe, is Harford County's Lincoln Day Dinner. They have Congresswoman Victoria Sparks as their speaker.
Yes.
Baltimore County is June 26th, I think.
Yes, that sounds right.
So we have a plethora of Lincoln Day dinners coming, including our own Red, White, and Blue fundraiser. It's a major fundraiser for the party. And looky who's joining us. It's our own Corinne Frank. Hey, Corinne! Yay! How are you, Corinne?
Doing good. I just got home and I was like, I gotta jump on and say hey.
Fantastic. Well, I'm having a great time because I didn't turn the light on and now it's getting dark in the neighborhood.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. And you know what?
Interview by candlelight.
Garrett County, but everybody is a Twitter about Vivek, and everybody is really excited about that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Hell yeah.
So we've got probably
Are we
19
doing table 8, Nicole?
We've got 19 or 20 people already signed up, and I'm trying to get
They're
carpools
really big
together.
table.
You know,
We're gonna have table 8, 8A, and 8B.
for sure. And then DJ Fred is DJing the party afterward. And if you've not seen DJ Fred spinning the hits, you have not lived. So
Where is that going to happen? He's going to be having it at Wisp also, or somewhere else?
No, it's at Wisp. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good, because I'm staying there.
That's
Wisp is a great place. Yeah.
I wish I could go. I already told the man I can't make it, but I'm glad you guys are gonna have fun. It'll be a good time.
All right, well, we have to leave it at that because we are at time. Special thanks to Kerry for joining us, Nicole for hosting with me, and Corinne with the last-minute drop-in. We will see you next week with another fascinating guest. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.